Hi everybody, it's Chelsea. I am going to do a quick review on a couple watches that I'm comparing because I couldn't find any good comparisons of these two. So I'm going to compare the Fossil Gen 3 Sport and the Samsung Gear Sport. Okay, so I've been wearing these for a couple days now. I've had the Samsung just a little bit longer and got them both on sale for around the same price. So just thought that I'd try both of them out. The Fossil uses Android Wear, which has some issues we'll talk about. And the Samsung uses Tizen, so it's its own software. Okay, so there's a lot of similarities, but I made a pros and cons list of each, so I'm just going to go through those. And hopefully it'll help some of you guys out if you're trying to decide like I've been. Okay, so first off, the Fossil. Okay, so you can see all of the notifications until you delete them all. So like if you get a text, then you can go back and see every single text that's come through, which is nice because sometimes like my husband will send me a text and then he'll like add on like one sentence. And when I'm on my Samsung, I can only see the most recent text that he sent. But on the Fossil, I can actually go back. Obviously, I usually have my phone close to me anyway, so it's not that big of a deal, but it's nice if it's buzzing and I'm looking at it on my watch already to be able to actually see the whole conversation. Okay, so also Android Wear has a lot more watch face options. I'm loving this one that came with Fossil. And obviously you can get a whole bunch more from Android Wear, but I am a nurse and I like to use the stopwatch. And so it makes it much, much easier to get to versus my Samsung. I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, and I can actually see the weather and it says 81 and sunny and I can click on it if I can get it in the right spot because I'm looking through my camera. And I can see the weather, which is really nice. You can also scroll down this way. I just like the bezel on the side. Okay, so that's that. Yeah, they have lots more face options, and you can change them. Terrible at this. Okay, yeah, that one you just swipe. Okay, so yeah, you can change them. Lots of these came with the Fossil. You can add more. It's pretty. The Fossil's pretty. There's no way around it. It's got this rose gold. I think it's a little more gold than rose, but the Fossil band is super comfortable. It's nice. I mean, it's really comfortable on my wrist. I think a lot of it has to do with the band, and you can obviously order Fossil bands for the Samsung. Like, you just switch them out because as long as it's a 20 millimeter. But yeah, comfortable right out of the box. It's a little bit bigger watch face than the Samsung, which is nice. I mean, when you're looking at your wrist. Granted, my Samsung, I've got this. I'm struggling finding a face that I like, so this is the one I'm on right now. But the middle part is tiny, so that makes a difference when you're comparing them. But yeah, the watch face is bigger, which I like. You can use gestures with the Fossil, and I think that's just Android Wear. You can just I can flick my wrist and scroll through all of my notifications, which I really like. And apparently, let's see if this works. I don't really know. I haven't done it. Okay, so I'm in the notification. Supposedly, if you shake your wrist, it goes back. Oh, look at that. Goes back to the home screen, and I kept shaking. Apparently, it goes to all the other apps. Anyway, so I like the wrist gestures because that way, if I've got two kids, if I'm holding one of my kids, I don't have to like reach over and use my other hand to go through if I don't have a hand free. The Samsung doesn't come with a ton of preloaded apps, which is weird because it's a sport watch, so you'd think that it would have like a timer pre-installed, but no, you have to go to the Gear app and actually add. So like it's not terrible. That's how I get to my stopwatch now, because I got to scroll through, and I had to add that too. I've added those, and you can add more. I just haven't gotten to it yet. All right, the Fossil uses Google Assistant, which is way nicer than the Samsungs. I'll talk about that in a minute, but it's way nicer than the S voice of the Samsung Gear. So you can use it with Hey Google, but everything in my house has Hey Google, including my phone, so it sends everything off. So I like to turn that off, and it also saves some battery. Hey Google, open stopwatch. Okay, so it works really well. It works really well for responding to text messages. You can actually ask it questions because it's through Google. Everybody who's used a Google device knows that it just works really well. The weather is more accurate than on my Samsung. So 82 and sunny. And it'll take you to the weather is right now, 86, 65. And tells me the rest of the week. So this one says 81 and clear sky, which is actually pretty darn close. So that some of the watch faces you can just click on it, but this particular one you can't. So I'll go to my weather. 72, which see that's not. One of them's wrong, and I'm gonna go with the Samsung's wrong. So it's just not quite as accurate from what I've seen. So those are my pros, like in comparison to my Samsung, but there's a lot more to it. I'm just not going to go into all the detail. They have a lot of similarities also. But yeah, those are on my pro list. My cons are, okay, so the watch face goes blank pretty quickly, and some people, it's probably not that big of a deal, but I'm a nurse, and just being at home too. Sometimes it takes me a minute to actually like register what I'm looking at, I guess. And there's no way to adjust it from what I found. So I know that you can like download apps like Facer or Watchmaker. I'm not sure. And if you like choose one of those, there's some ways to adjust the length of time that it stays up instead of timing out. But I really like this watch face, and I can't adjust that. So not a huge deal for a lot of people, but I don't particularly like it. It even goes blank if I'm in an app. So say I'm using my timer. At least it did before. Yep, there it goes. Okay, so yeah, it even goes blank if you're in an app. So that's not particularly great. The overall screen, I think, is darker. You can turn up the screen brightness. Sorry, my son's playing stuff in the background. Yeah, the overall screen brightness when it's on auto is darker. So I could turn it up all the way, and then it's plenty bright. And I have absolutely no problems with it. But I'm trying to save battery because I'll get to that in a minute. That's like the big issue with this watch. So I turn it to automatic. So it just doesn't seem as bright for the same battery. Not a huge deal. You can still see it. It's really not that big of a deal. But it's just another thing that's a little bit different. And overall, it just seems a little more fragile. I know that's silly. I don't even know what I was doing. I was like putting laundry away, and it must have hit something. Like I guess I'm hard on my watches. Like it must have like scraped against the wall, or I hit the dresser or something. And there was like tiny little, it looked like scrapes, and I was like freaking out because I had just had it for a day. And it ended up coming off. I don't know how. I was cleaning it and it still was there, but then the next day I did the same thing and it went away. So I mean, obviously, I would put a screen protector on either one, but it just seems a little more fragile than the Samsung. Okay, also the charger's kind of weird. So here's the charger that comes in the box. I know that looks funny. It can charge into any USB though. Anyway, it has the prongs that you have to like kind of make sure that they're in the back of the watch. I'm not going to take it off, but there's like little prongs. It's still magnetic. It's just kind of weird because you have to line up the prongs because the heart rate monitor. It charges all night. It doesn't come off. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but yeah, if that's a concern for you, then it's weird. Here's the Samsung charger. Really simple. Take it off and you dock it. You just set it like that so it's facing you. Charges really easily. It's magnetic. Easy. Okay, so the biggest problem with this watch is the battery life. It's at 85%, and my Samsung is also, let's see, it's at 88%. Okay, but during this, so I wore this all day yesterday, like both of them at the same time, like I'm doing now, and looked like a weirdo, but that's okay. And in the morning, it was fine. They were almost identical. are pretty close, just kind of like they are now. But in the second half of my day, which I didn't do anything differently, had the same notifications going and all that, and it drained really fast the second half of the day. It still lasted me a full day, which I was surprised because I was really concerned about the battery life of the Fossil. Sorry, my video paused, so I had to restart a new one. Okay, talking about battery life. So I wore both watches yesterday on both my wrists like a dork. And I wore them between 6:30 and 8 p.m. is when I checked the battery life the first time. And so my Fossil was at 9% at 8 o'clock. And it kicks into battery saver mode at 14%, I think. And I don't really know what changes. I think that it maybe doesn't buzz your wrist when you get notifications. I could still see notifications. I don't think it was buzzing my wrist. And it changes a couple things just to try to conserve battery, which actually worked because by 10 o'clock it was still kicking at 2% battery life when I actually ended up putting it on the charger. But anyway, so 9% at 8 o'clock when I put it on at 6:30. My Samsung was at 55% at 8 o'clock. I had the same, like I didn't change anything between the morning and night, and the second half of my day wasn't like any crazier with notifications. Oops, sorry. So, I don't know, it drained much faster during the second half of the day. Okay, so moving on to the Samsung. So pros, the bezel. Okay, the bezel's really cool. So you can turn it. It's satisfying because it clicks. I don't know if you can hear it. It's easy. Like, I could use this outside, like in the winter here in Kansas. It gets cold and I have to wear gloves. And it'd be really easy to just turn it and see all my little widgets here. It's still touchscreen. I could still like do everything by touching it. But sometimes it's nice. Then I don't have to smudge up the screen, or it's just easy. So I like the bezel. Oh, you can use it with gloves, even the touchscreen. So, okay, so settings. And then you go to device. Touch sensitivity. I was messing with it earlier. Must have it on. Increase the touch sensitivity. This will let you use it gear if you're wearing gloves. Okay, so turn that on. And then you can use it when you're wearing gloves. I don't have winter gloves right next to me because it's 80 degrees outside. But I know it works, so that's nice. Another thing I like about this is the buttons on the side. I don't know if you can see them. I can't turn my wrist that way. Okay, so there's 2 buttons. Fossil only has 1. On the Fossils, it just takes you back home. So if I'm adding a watch face, I click that, it goes back home. This one, if I'm anywhere, then I click the top button to go back. Just goes back 1. And then if I click the bottom button, it goes back home. So I really like that. Granted, you can do that with the Fossil too. It's just not a button. You just swipe back and it goes back. So not a big deal. But 2 buttons, nice. I don't have to touch the screen to do it. This also, like I said, the screen's brighter. With the better battery life, you can have the screen brighter, which is nice. It also has an auto dim, I guess. I don't really notice that when I was putting my son to bed and his room was like pitch black. I moved my wrist and like the whole room lit up, I felt like. So I don't really know if it actually dims when you're in darker light. Maybe that's outside. I don't know. I didn't notice a difference, but it has that. So yeah, you can get more notifications for obviously with the better battery. Like I said, my biggest concern is the battery with this. But I have more notifications coming through this watch, the Samsung. I actually have like all my Gmail coming through it and a couple more apps. I don't really need my Gmail. I get 1,000,001 emails a day. So I don't really have to see every single one of them. But it's nice because if I wanted to add some apps to this, like I already have, I put like my MyFitnessPal on here and a couple other things. And I did not do that with my Fossil because I just know that it's going to drain more battery. And it just doesn't compare to the Samsung's battery. So yeah, you can get more notifications and still not worry about this making through a whole day. I mean, honestly, I feel like I use it a lot. I came from an Apple Watch. And at 10 o'clock, my Samsung was at 50%. My Fossil at 10 o'clock was at 2% on battery saver mode. And it did hang on all day, but that was right out of the box. So I don't know what it's going to do a couple months from now, which is a concern. But I'm not worried about my Samsung. My battery's going to stay there with me all day, if not more, even if I do more things with it. Let's see. Oh, you can change the screen timeout, which is huge for me. I don't know, I just feel like that goes blank way too quickly. But you can change it in the settings. I don't know, it's probably going to take me a minute to find it. But you can, I promise it's there. You can change it. I think you can change it up to like 5 minutes, which is crazy, and who needs it to be on for 5 minutes? But it's nice. I think I have mine on like 30 seconds, and it's plenty. And then it still goes blank when I like am not looking at it. You can have it on always on, but I don't need that because I don't need everyone else seeing my notifications if I'm not looking at them. And you can also have the Fossil with ambient mode. Like mine just goes blank when I'm not looking at it. But when it's in ambient mode, when your wrist is like down to your side, we'll have like a blank display, but it'll still show the time. So if the display is not on and your wrist is sitting there, you can still see the time. But I didn't do that because, once again, the battery life. Back to the Samsung. It's also, not that I live anywhere near an ocean, because I live in Kansas, but it's saltwater safe. Some people have saltwater pools. It's just nice that I wouldn't have to worry about it being in saltwater. And if you live near an ocean, then there you go. Saltwater safe. Nice. And it also has a mode, like if you're in the water, in the settings, you can turn it to like water mode or water lock. And if you like tap the screen, or the water won't mess with your watch or whatever. I don't know. It won't change. It won't like get into your settings and do weird things while you're splashing around in the water, I think is what it's for, until you turn the screen back on yourself. So that's pretty cool. You can wear them both while you're swimming. Fossil you cannot wear in salt water, I don't think, but Samsung you can. GPS, this has its own GPS, so not that I even think I would do this, but I might. Like if I go on a run at the lake, then I don't have to take my phone. I probably would, because I can't make phone calls on this. I have the Google Pixel 2 XL, so I know that if you have a Samsung phone that this will integrate even better with it, and you might be able to answer phone calls on it, but I can't. I can only decline phone calls, which I'll talk about in the cons here in a minute. But anyway, it has its own GPS, so technically it could map your run route if you didn't have your phone. So that's cool. This one, you'd have to have your phone with you in order for it to link off of its GPS. Not a huge deal, but still a pro. And once again, I just think it's more durable. I'm hard on my watches. I bump into things, I guess, as I walk. And there's been no sign of like any scratches, dings, or anything. So nice, just a little more durable. Okay, cons. You cannot see the notifications if you look at it when they come in. So say my wrist buzzes, I get a text. I look at it, I see the text. Nice, lovely. Another text comes in at the same time. I can only see the most recent text. Now, I don't know if that's true. Like, say my mom texts me and then my husband texts me. I might be able to see both of those, but I know that if my husband texts me twice in a row, I can only see his most recent text. Like that. How about shrimp tacos? And he texted me right before that. Can't see it. But on this one, I can. I'm not going to show you what he texted me, but anyway, if any notification comes in, even from an app, so say Facebook, I get a Facebook message and I look at it and I see it, put my wrist down, and then I'm like, wait, what did that say? I can't go back and see what it said unless I didn't look at it right away, if that makes sense. So like if I got a Facebook message and I didn't look at it right away when it buzzed, and then I lift my wrist up, and then there's usually like a little dot over here telling you that you have a notification, then I can see it all the time until I delete it. But not if I actually look at it when it comes in. It's really not that big of a deal, but it is a difference, because if I look at it when it comes in on the Fossil, then I can still see it. See, I told you I wasn't going to show you, and I still did. Talking about food. Okay, S-Voice. Okay, so this uses S-Voice instead of Google. So what you do here is you say, okay, Gear, open the stopwatch. Okay, so it heard me. It just took a lot longer. And now it's loading, and then it did it. Okay, so it's just not as good as Google. I mean, honestly, if you're doing it for anything other than opening apps that you have, I mean, it will respond. I've like responded to text messages with it, but sometimes, like one time I asked it to text my husband, and then it asked me what I wanted to say, and I went through the entire thing, and then I sent it, and then it was like, error, and it never actually sent it. So it's just not anywhere near on the same par as the Google Assistant. So yeah, pretty much sucks. You can't ask it questions. You can't, I mean, you can say like, what's the weather like today?
I like it better when you ask the questions.
Oh, see, there's my Google Home going. Yeah, S-Voice, fail. But it still works for little things, so that's okay. Okay, I cannot answer the phone call that comes in on this watch. If I get a phone call, then it shows up, I can see who's calling, and there's only a little reject icon here. So I can reject the call, like if I don't need to answer that phone call, my phone doesn't have to keep ringing, I can reject it. That's nice, I like it. But I cannot answer the phone call. Not that I could talk on either watch. My Fossil, I can answer the phone call, but I still have to go get my phone. But it's nice because if I'm like changing one of my kids' diapers, then somebody's calling and I don't want to miss it, I can answer it and then like, yell across the room, hey, I'll be there in a second, But yeah, with my Samsung, I cannot do that. I can only reject the call. The weather's not as accurate. We already talked about that. It's not as pretty. It's not terrible. I got the blue. I think that if I changed the watch band, it would make a huge difference. I actually had the watch band, like I put the Fossil watch band on the Samsung, and I really liked it. So I've got some watch bands coming. Make it prettier, but not as pretty as my Fossil. Smaller screen, already talked about it. Watch faces, they're not bad, they just, none of them are exactly what I want. Yeah, they've got a lot of good options. I mean, especially if you're a dude. Yeah, if you're a guy, they've got a lot of great options, I think. But I am a girl, and I want it to actually look, kind of girly on my wrist. So they just don't have a ton of options. You can obviously go, this is from Facer. None of them just have exactly what I want. But that's okay. I'm sure I'll find it. I've only been looking for a couple days. Okay, so that is my 2 cents on these 2 watches. You can make the decision for yourself. I'm probably going to decide here in the next couple days. Right now, if I had to decide, I would go with my Samsung, just because I honestly really like the functionality of the Fossil. And I love the way it looks. I just don't want to have to worry about my battery life all the time. I want to be able to use my watch how I want to use my watch without worrying about it dying at the end of the day. So, yeah, sorry this video was super, super long, but there it is. There's my pros and cons on the 2. Hope this helped you.